Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Pointy Not Sharp. Today we're taking a look at a Chinese Type 81 bayonet. Now these bayonets were made for the Type 81 rifle, which is kind of a hybrid between the Type 56 AK and the Type 56 carbine SKS, because it's essentially a short stroke AK, kind of like it looks like an AK. It's got a long, weird receiver, but then it has the operating mechanism, short stroke gas piston of an SKS. So, yeah, cool little rifle. Now, these bayonets were made by Norinco, of course, about everything in China is, and, weapons. And they were produced from 1983 until 2023, last year they stopped production. From what I read, there's about 400,000 of the rifles made. I'm assuming a similar number of the bayonets. But on top of the military bayonets, they also made a commercial run, which is what we have here. Some people call them reproductions, but considering they're made in the same factory for the commercial market to a lower standard, I wouldn't call them a reproduction as much as a commercial product to try and cash out where they can. So I'll jump into the history. Before the Type 81, the Chinese were using the Type 56 carbine, which is an SKS with a folding bayonet, the Type 56 assault rifle, which was an AK essentially, again with a folding bayonet. I've got to say, they're absolute jerks for calling their two weapons, carbine and assault rifle versions, calling them both Type 56. Then in 1963, they also released the Type 63 assault rifle, which was kind of a hybrid again between an SKS and an AK. All three of those had the folding bayonets, and despite how it looks, this isn't actually that far removed from those folders, and I'll get to that shortly. So the rifle and bayonet itself were designed from 1978 to 1981. It was accepted into service in 1981, and production really started in 1983. Now, it should be noted that this was the first knife bayonet since their old Mauser rifles. For quite a few years, they'd had like folding spikes. So this was a step in the opposite direction from what they had previously been doing. Now, these were in service for about 15 years before they started to be replaced by their new bayonet, which was the QBZ-95 for the QBZ-95 rifle. That bayonet is essentially just a copy of the US M9, complete with a wire cutter. Now, Type 81 rifles and bayonets were exported to many third world countries, and I'll call them issue motivated groups or non-state actors, but they're terrorist organizations. Like ISIS used a lot of Type 81s. Pretty much if you jump on like Wikipedia, it's got a list of everyone who uses the Type 81, and there's not a very good list there. It's a lot of terrorist organizations in third world countries, so they've got to buy weapons from somewhere, and I guess China's willing to sell them, or maybe they're being sold to these organizations and countries by people that bought them from China. So maybe there's a little bit of complication there. Now, in I think it was the 90s, these were the bayonets were imported into the US. There was a large number of them that came in. They were a commercial product, and they were the original version, not the commercial version here. And there wasn't a lot of interest in them initially, so quite a few of them you'll find with a metal plate welded on top of the pommel, just above here. And that was so that these could be fitted to M1 carbines. You do occasionally find them, and while they were never used militarily, I think they're a cool little thing to collect as well. I'd love to get my hands on one of them because it's a fun little bit of history. Anyway, that aside, we'll jump into the construction, and that's where this gets interesting, because you hear Chinese, you think crap. You think it's going to be cheap, poorly made garbage. And yeah, a couple aspects of this are pretty cheap and pretty garbage, but some are just absolutely fantastic. Like, I know the camera doesn't show it, but this blade is really, really nasty. It's really thick. Like, look how thick that is. That's reminiscent of the socket spike bayonets that they'd previously used on their SKSs and Type 56s. Like, that is an incredibly thick, heavy, and solid blade. It tapers down the whole way to a really sharp point. Like, this bayonet is razor sharp the whole way down. We've got our thick spine and 2 fullers on either side. And it's got a bit of weight to it. It feels really, really strong. I don't know how solid the tang is. Like, I'm a little concerned because the crossguard and muzzle ring are really, really weak, and I wonder if there's a weak point in here. But everyone I've shown this bayonet to in person has immediately gone out and bought one because they are dirt cheap. Like, I got this one off eBay for 60 Australian dollars. It's like 40 bucks in the US. That's nothing. And considering for the product you get, this is actually a really, really good bayonet. Now, moving down, we'll take a look at the whole thing. We've got our brown polymer grips with a pin going through the tang, and it's 2 sides that are disconnected. And then we've got a solid metal pommel with a standard push button and a ramped lug for attaching to the rifle. Now, this is definitely inspired by or copied from the AK Type 2 or the 6x4 bayonets that the Russians introduced and were copied by pretty much every Warsaw Pact country. And there's a good reason they copied it. It's a good design. But it feels very good in the handle. I've got a very big hand. I'm 6'3", and this is comfortable for me to hold. So considering it was made for short little Chinese soldiers, it's a very, very generously sized handle. And yeah, as I said, very, very comfortable. Now, the original military ones, the construction was a bit sturdier and a bit better than this. So being one of the commercial ones, it's not as good. I've been told if you hold them side by side, you can feel the difference. But I've only got the commercial one, so I can't tell. But from what I can tell, the easiest way to tell the two apart is if you have a look at the pommel. You'll see the surface here is a little like bubbly and mottled. That's because this is a cast piece. That's a very cheap form of manufacturing, and honestly it's crap. The proper issued ones that the Chinese used were milled, so you'll have circular tool marks on the surface, and that's an easy way to tell them apart. I find it interesting that they've got the hole for the wrist strap, even though we don't have the hook for the wrist strap, so they've just blatantly copied the Russians and haven't even incorporated that feature. Now, as with the Type 87 that I previously reviewed, the mortise, push button, crossguard and muzzle ring, they feel really, really cheap, really, really weak, and I don't like how this would really attach to the rifle. I feel it'd be a very, very weak mount. Anyway, I'll put that down, and we'll talk about the scabbard very quickly. So it's just a green plastic scabbard. Got a leather frog that's just like pinned on, and as with the Type 87, we've got our Chinese star impressed on the button. Another way you can tell that this one is a commercial and not a military one is the green plastic is like a lighter color. I think the proper military ones have more of a dark or olive look to them than this. And usually the frogs are a little bit shinier and the leather's a little bit darker as well, but pretty close. Finally, the last thing I'll talk about is if you buy one of these, they come in one of these big black boxes. So I'll just pack it away so it's as if I just got it. Come on. So it just comes in the box like this. Now, I've seen the older original ones, the military ones, they come in essentially the same box, but instead of black, it's white. And hopefully I can chuck a photo up to show you that box. But I really like the fact that it comes in its own little box, and I'm going to keep the box just for the cool factor. Anyway, guys, that's all I really have to say about these. For what you get, they are fantastic value for money. I don't usually rate bayonets as like a hunting tool or survival tool, but if you're going pigging and you need to dispatch a pig or something like that, you can't get much better than this. This is 100% a thrusting tool. This will go through any kind of thick hide. Not great for cutting, not particularly sharp on the edges, but you get to about here, that is razor sharp. And that is one hell of a point. And just the fact that it tapers down in every aspect. I previously mentioned that I showed a couple of mates these and they instantly went out and bought them, and they use them, as I said, for hunting, for dispatching pigs. So very cheap, Very, very good knife. If you don't have one in your collection and you collect bayonets, I highly recommend you get one. I know they're a commercial product and not a lot of people go for those, but well worth the money. Anyway, guys, that's all I've got to say about this one. I really, really like it. I don't regret buying it one bit. And thanks for watching.